Hello, everybody. As I fix my headphones, good evening. Welcome to dotBUILTenvironment's book club tonight. If you've wandered over from Twitter, continue to tweet at me, and I will read them on this. And if you have any thoughts to share on our book that we're reading or anything at all, just let me know. Continue to tweet us at .be book club. That's at .be book club. Or you can listen to me live. Hi, if this is your first time here, this is the book club for dotBUILTenvironment, and we are a collective, and I think we tend to work in the built environment, obviously, but spanning everywhere from architects to, well, I'm a conservator, so it's everything you think would involve lots of tech, and then things you might not expect would involve lots of tech. And that's why we're reading our book at the moment, The Future of the Professions, and gives us some time to reflect about where we are, what we're doing, and where we want to go in our work. And it's going to be a slow one to start. This is only the second broadcast, and since we're getting to know our audience, getting to know who wants to participate and whether or not people can, the date for this meeting might change from a weekly Thursday thing, to a different weekday, or it might change to a monthly thing. It depends on people's schedules. The ideal is to have everybody participate or listen or be involved whenever they can, drop in and out, really kind of harness the tech that we have, harness the things like Google Hangout, and YouTube and Twitter, and let you be involved as much as you want. If you have thoughts and ideas that you want to send our way, send into the ether. You could send it via us, and we'll share it with everybody. And so let's get to the book. We're officially reading chapter 2, but I'm gonna kind of wander about a bit. It's not that much fun just going from one chapter to another anyway. Sometimes you start reading and it gives you ideas. Oh, and it was Autodesk University week, wasn't it? Or the meeting. And actually, let me talk about that first, because I was following it on Twitter, not being able to go all the way to Las Vegas. And the keynote was lovely young lady by the name of Anna Nixon was speaking as part of the keynote. And if you don't know who Anna Nixon is, definitely Google her. You might need to Google Anna Nixon and robots. She's a 16-year-old robot builder. And she was apparently, according to this one blog I read, schooling a room full of engineers on what it means to be a team player. It was just going from Anna Nixon, also reminded me of, I don't know if you've heard of Brittany Wenger. She was a teenager from Florida. A few years ago, she made the headlines because she developed a neural network program to analyze breast cancer images that helped doctors diagnose breast cancer. And I think she did this when she was also around the same age as Anna Nixon is now, I think around 16. But she became international news around when she was 19. And all these young people who are, to me, a few years ago, when I was that age, like that kind of spells career done. But this is their beginning, and this is a lot of self-learning, and it does kind of redefine professions. That there isn't that progression of there's the teacher and the student. With what we have nowadays, all this access, all this information, we could teach ourselves. That's not as easy as it sounds sometimes. You have to know where to look. But once you get started, once you do start looking, it becomes easier. Every single thing gets easier and easier, doesn't it? Yeah, I think there was somebody who tweeted us a few weeks ago when we first started this, and they tweeted asking about, well, what about the future of education or the profession in education? I'm sorry, I don't remember your handle. I'm sure it's on our feed somewhere. But if you're listening tonight, yes, please tweet or come join us. The Google Hangout link is available. It's also on our Twitter feed. Yeah, I'm really curious as to what side of education you were thinking about, how tech and digital skills come into it. Because the way I think about it is, I think immediately, well, there's different ways. There's the, every kid walking with a tablet kind of way. It just means they're able to access this up-to-date technology right in the classroom from the get-go. And then it was almost like traditional classical ways of learning, but made into apps. So there's that end of it. But then the other end is things like open source and, like almost learning has become wiki hot links. You go from one thing and then it sparks your imagination and you find the link, you click on it, and you keep going. And after a few hours, you realize you've come pretty far. Yeah, so if anybody would like to chime in and tell me about your education experience, that kind of matches up with something we're doing here at dotBUILTenvironment, looking into kind of career trackers, mainly as an experiment, I think, to the way I understand it is to see how non-linear our career lives are nowadays. And yeah, I think it's going to be more so for the current generation and the next generation. There's quite a lot of food for thought. So I am going, while everybody kind of settles in, because we've only just started. If you're just joining now, you haven't really missed much. Settling in, and I'm going to check the feed, seeing if anybody has come on in, asked a question, and check our Slack group. If anybody in our Slack group has asked a question or actually didn't mention anything. Aha, ooh, Ksenia. Hi, Ksenia. She's on a train at the moment. Ksenia is also part of dotBUILTenvironment. And she has a contribution for Chapter 2 on the financial audits. They take samples of data to analyze and are now moving to being able to analyze all the data. Sorry, I'm reading exactly what she's typing, so bear with me here. To next step being just actively monitoring raw, messy data. Construction industry could do with A, capturing way more data about the built environment, and B, doing so in a systemized way so it can compare across different buildings, processes, etc. It's sort of starting with environment or energy monitoring, but would be awesome to expand. I think that's been mentioned at a few hackathons, conferences already. Hope that makes sense. Thank you, Ksenia. Yes, I think it does make sense. If I'm grasping it right, just gathering all that information, right? Going from the financial audits that they mention, example in the book, kind of taking it into the construction industry world. We do work in the three-dimensional landscape, capturing way more data. about the built environment. Yes, wind, kind of let's see, traffic, not just car traffic, but people, how they use a space, how they interact with it, maybe how they interact before something was done to it, to get an idea of maybe how you could divert things. I'm sure, this sort of traffic flow monitoring, flow simulation is already used, but at the same time of collecting the data, you could build quite an interesting training set for these neural networks for machine learning, or maybe machine learning and simulation. Yeah, that would be very interesting, especially if you aggregate information from Oyster cards, people moving from one place to another. I'm sure TFL has lots of information there, and I know they have it available on their website. I don't remember the link right now, but they do have some open data that they want people to use. This is definitely something I came across, and I forget if it was at a KTN Knowledge Transfer Network meeting or a Catapult one, one of those. And TFL was there, and they basically say, we have data, please use it, please do something fun with it, go. And that's it. Everybody, we kind of need a construction industry version of Kaggle. I don't know if you guys know what Kaggle is. It's an online platform. It's a website, and it's kind of crowdsourcing data scientists. And I just realized I had the mic check myself, so I hope you guys can hear me. Anyway, yes. So Kaggle, Kaggle. They're legit companies, big companies, that they will present a data packet, and a lot of it is not normalized. It's just a chunk of data. I think the NHS contributed something at some point, and you go and you do something with it. See what sort of patterns you can find. See if there's any information that can be extracted from it that would be useful, or informative, or just eye-opening. And I think a construction industry version of Kaggle would be really exciting. Maybe not on its own standalone website. Yeah, that sounds fun too, but maybe during a hackathon, if there's a construction industry data set hackathon, people come and before just let us download some and then have a go. My computer programming background is very limited, but I think from where people associate conservators as people who kind of sit in the back of museums with big magnifying glasses and cleaning things. Yes, we definitely do that. But sometimes when you're working in very large collections with thousands of things, especially nowadays with digitization, it's for the public's benefit, and it's for the object's benefit, right? The less something is handled, the safer it'll be. But of course, you have to make sure it is safe enough to be handled for that one special moment of being digitized. So there are conservators out there who in addition to their daily task of keeping everything going, they prepare things for digitization. And I worked on a digitization I worked on a few, but the one key one I was thinking of, yeah, it just kind of brought all this coding skills, I use that with quotes, back up to the fore, because it's something I did in school. And when I say that, I sound kind of old, because when I was in 7th grade, we did BASIC, I don't know if everybody's even familiar with BASIC. That's in all caps, BASIK. Okay? Oh God, I can't spell it. BASIC. And in college, I did C++, and for modern life, a bit of HTML here and there. Does anybody remember LiveJournal? And yeah, and then a bit of JavaScript on top of that. And then that ended up being really useful for doing all sorts of whizzy things on Photoshop. And so, yes, I'm talking around the houses here a bit, but coding skills come in handy all the time in the wackiest of places. And that led me to be interested in hackathons. Also, at the same time, as a college student in my youth, I had a few friends who studied animation, and so of course there were computery, artsy nerds there. And hackathons are they have a good vibe, I say. So this is my kind of love song / babbling ode to the hackathon. And whenever I go to one, it does bring me back to being in college, being 1 a.m, sitting in the computer lab with lots of junk food. I don't know if that's healthy, but they definitely kind of carry on that sort of ritual. And yeah, a bit of nostalgia while tinkering with amazing programming. And you're probably wondering why I'm still babbling on about hackathons. Well, there is Hack Construct, and I believe they have a hackathon coming up. I should have done a bit more homework. But anyway, you could Google them and you could check them out, and you could find out what the next event is, what themes are happening, and who are the people contributing, wanting to know what people are up to. Taking another moment, reading some messages. Is this dinner time for everybody out there? Thursday evenings, I wolf down something really quickly, feed my kid, and and jump on the computer and cross my fingers and hope she sleeps for an hour. So far, so good. Is wondering what everyone else is up to, if that's exactly the same thing happening. Feeding themselves, commuting, probably. Yes. All right, back to the book. I think between chapter 2 and chapter 3, where they start discussing individual specific fields like doctors and lawyers and managing consultants. This is something I've kind of wondered about for a long time, especially sitting where I sit in conservation, and then how that fits into the construction / engineering industry. We're pretty peripheral most of the time, or at least that's in the grand scheme how people perceive it. It's either at the front during the planning, mainly because of if it's listed, if it's a monument, that sort of thing, all the way down to at the very far end of the supply chain, the restorers on site. And I rather use conservators because restoring has a bit more of a kind of chopping and changing. It's not necessarily bad. It's just it kind of hints at a bit more of replacement that's needed, whereas in conserving is trying to keep things there as much as possible and like use what's there. But anyway, the European way is to hyphenate it. It's the conservator hyphen restorer. So I'm going to go with that. But we, at the moment, the where we sit seems to be at the front fringe and then at the back fringe. And from kind of seeing this bookend, from the bookend perspective, you know, I'm sure everybody experiences just problems in the planning where things are planned out and then things are missed, and then everything starts to shrink, budgets start to shrink, time starts to shrink. And I do wonder how so sorry, lost my train of thought there. So I think sorry. See a notification from Mr. David Knight. It says, wish I could be there, but I'm in Spain and the connection is likely to be even worse than my bus journey. Oh, hi, David. A big wave to you in Spain. It's interesting. All this talk of teleconferencing in the book as well. You know what? I'm gonna jump out again. I'm gonna talk about Magic Leap instead of the book. It's kind of tiptoeing around the things in the book. It's about you know, in the book they talk about the distinction between automation and innovation, where technology can come in and it kind of does one of two things. You know, it either people see it as a way of making their lives easier, doing the same thing that they did before but faster, or you know, get computerized. And then the other side of it is it's the innovating, where it's doing something you've never done before or didn't even consider. So the example in the book was ATM machines. How, you know, yes, there were bank tellers, but that's it's not necessarily just automating bank tellers, because the innovating side was that now you could go and get money out at midnight and or whenever you want. And that's the innovative bit. So the innovation side, that I just want to jump out and talk about Magic Leap. So another .be member, Alex McLaren, pointed this out, and it's really intriguing. If you haven't come across Magic Leap yet, there's a Forbes article, and it's a gentleman who, programming guy, then went into medical devices and did really well for himself, sold that business, and then decided to like kind of nerd out for a bit and work with Weta on a kind of personal project to, as well as I could understand it, some sort of kind of fun, interactive comic book-ish movie. He's a big Star Wars fan, kind of a project, and he commissioned Weta to do, I'm guessing, or the way I interpreted it was the visuals for this. But then in them, and with some other things that he was working on, he started to work on, well, like in a big catch-all way, holograms. But I mean, for the most part, holograms now, it's out there. It's really visually stunning, but it's not holograms in a Star Trek sort of. There's the you know, the room you go to and you interact with it physically. Now, I mean, it's not physical yet, but Magic Leap is presenting holograms or light field technology, would be the term, I guess, in a more ubiquitous way than, because the holograms we see now, I think, it's kind of, I don't know if you've been to shows and stuff, and they get projected, and it looks like it's projected in midair, but actually, if the lights were on, and you went up close, there are these fine filaments all around, and it's actually, it's still very highly technical, and lots of math into getting to project at the right times, making amazing shapes and all that. But this is, it's at the moment it's a headset, and it's going to be a pair of glasses that you wear, and that will project in your eye, not in you know, retina burning sort of way, but project in your eye an image, so that the example in the Forbes article is, at the moment, if you're playing Pokemon Go, you could see the Pokemon, you know, in the park that you're in. But if it's in Magic Leap, the Pokemon might be in your living room, and it will take the information from around it and then kind of feed back into it. And so the Pokemon might run and hide behind your couch. Or another usage would be to try out different couches in your room if you're shopping. Move them around, see what it looks like in your home before you buy it. And of course, the entertainment industry, and back all the loop back around to what he did before, in kind of products and medical training. I think that's fascinating, and many people think it's fascinating too, because they're just throwing money at him. The reason why it was in Forbes was because he has now achieved $4.5 billion in startup capital. So yay for Magic Leap guy, and waiting to have a go, really. Oh yeah, they have Neil Stephenson, the author, the sci-fi author, as his chief futurist. So yes, it's very serious stuff, and they're doing really well. Apparently, it's not just an idea. They were able to achieve projecting a pixel, which, you know, it's on the way there. Yeah, so back again to the book. Their professions are changing. You know, who could anticipate VR designer? You know, maybe in the 80s in a kind of Tron sort of way, but now in the medical training, you know, if you want to be a medical researcher or become a professor and then teach, you have to have way more technical skills, not only in you know, the human body, but maybe not yourself, because as like data scientists working with companies and things who have the data, maybe there will be some sort of data scientists working in the medical profession, but we're going to have to be able to speak the same language and know the process, change the process, and then work together to enable teaching and treating patients differently. I'm hanging around the medical side of it for a bit, because recently I've been to the Royal Society. This is just kind of like a romp through what Anna's done in the last couple of months, isn't it? Didn't mean for it to happen that way, but this is the fun thing about this book. It kind of ties in all the things that you think about on your day-to-day. And then, yeah, so at this Royal Society event, it was specifically on haptics. So it was tech about revolving around touch, our sense of touch. So yeah, lots of tech is kind of visual. Haptics, probably at the moment, most would be kind of the vibrating response we get from our mobiles. You know, if we pick something, do something, slide something, and it's what it wants to do. It's giving you a signal. It will do a bit of shake. Now this is way more complicated. So there was a whole section about recreating medical training scenarios, and the most popular display was the prostate exam. And now the engineers worked with the doctors to create this, and to make sure that it actually felt like it's supposed to. And yes, so you can see how useful that is, because you don't want a lot of it's also kind of awkward, isn't it, to be a young trainee going around, it's your first day, and you're like, oh, okay, hello sir, can you disrobe please? Yes, I have a student with me today. He'll be undertaking the exam and I'll be supervising. Everyone in that room all of a sudden goes, eek. But it's a bit more of the main event, so you become a bit more at ease with it. Things that are uncomfortable or difficult. My favorite is the practicing on 3D printed things before diving into a real person. Yes, practice away, please. Yeah, I wonder if that would ever happen in construction industry. If there's a scale down. I'm just imagining, what if we built in a Tetris sort of way, and then had to deconstruct in a Jenga sort of way, and then ran some simulations to see which brick would be the best one to remove first. All sorts of things. This is Anna's wacky brain jumping from one topic to another. These are the things I think about when I'm reading this book. See if there's anybody else who's left a message. I think usually it will be more of a conversation with several members, but it's been a busy week. Like I said, some people are out and over at Autodesk University, and all sorts of other things happening around. Having a look. I wonder if anybody has any comments on apprenticeships in the construction industry, everywhere from the bricklayer kind of apprenticeships to the CAD modeler apprenticeships, and how they see these evolving professions also kind of changing that way in, modifying it somehow. Does now the apprentice come in and then sit at a computer before they go out on site? I mean, no, but I'm being facetious. But maybe some people that's what they see it as. I think it requires a bit more. There's a lot more involved. Maybe someone who's in an apprenticeship could send in their thoughts, or jump on the Google Hangout. Again, if you check out our Twitter feed, that it's the link is there. And if the time runs out, or if you're watching this on YouTube later on and you think, oh wait, I want to say something, or I want to tell Anna something, this reminds you of X, please do. There's no time limit. Just really curious how people think and feel about the subject matter in this book. and how they think it's going to impact their work or if their education. Do you feel like you started and now you feel I have to learn more? Does that feel kind of overwhelming? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's going. You found a way about it that it seems completely obvious and logical. And if so, please share it with us. I suppose I'm making it sound kind of negative, mainly because I was at last year's Digiconstruct week. There was a I don't know what you call it. It was like a roundtable or seminar. I was literally walking down there when someone pulled me in. Oh, do you want to do this and participate? And I was like, okay. And when I got in, it was about BIM, and it was about the uptake in BIM and whether or not people's own companies or the company, the companies they work for, trying to gauge whether they were happy about it, or they were sad about it, whether they're excited to take it on, whether that was old hat, they've been doing it. But a lot of the comments were, the people who were sitting in the room were on board, but they only had so much time to dedicate to it themselves, right? If it's not a kind of a designated thing and everyone's all in kind of deal, they don't really have the time or the resources to dedicate to it by themselves. It needs to be a kind of the team has to go for it, and they feel it's an uphill battle. This was kind of a common thing where certain people, and even people in the room, would say, well, I've been in this business for a while now and I'm going to retire soon. Do I really have to do this? And they mentioned this in the book as well, about kind of in chapter 2 and chapter 3, but about the vanguard, about the early adopters, and then even the people who are resistant know that there's a change afoot. It's just a timeline difference. The vanguard, the people who are thirsty and hungry for it and veering to go, and their timeline is, yes, this change will happen in the short term. It'll happen next year. We'll need to change in order to stay viable within the short term. Whereas in the other side, still agrees that a change is coming, but they project that it'll take a bit longer, and hopefully it'll be long enough that in the interim they could retire or change professions or bow out, basically not be their problem. And I was just wondering if anybody else has come across that. I'm sure it's not just a construction industry issue. I'm sure at the moment a lot of industries kind of stuck between finance issues, funding issues, staff issues, limited skills and skill shortage and all of that. Where do you find the resources, and I mean time and money and people dedicated to work on it, to do this and this sort of like R&D changeover uptake? There are positive stories out there as well, and I've heard those, and they keep me positive and optimistic. But I was wondering if other people had their stories, or if maybe they thought they were pretty negative about it to start with, and then actually when it got going it wasn't so bad. Or maybe the other case was you took the plunge, and it made a project really difficult, mainly because it was just trying to do too much at once. There was a lot of learning done, but it made everything quite uncomfortable, difficult, messy. Yeah. Give me a ping. Hi, Dwight. Thanks for pinging in. It's giving you a shout out. All right. Also, while reading, some of the examples are about, is a professional going to be superseded by technology? And obviously, that's the fear, right? Even their titles kind of, it's begging for that kind of reaction. The future of professions, how technology will transform the work of human experts. They do use transform. They don't say make obsolete. And never do they say, human experts will become useless and outmoded. There'll always be the need for the human component to this, to delivering knowledge, specialist knowledge. Yeah. Does anybody feel like they're a modern day Luddite? Maybe not a Luddite in the sense of you're anti-new, anti-technology, but in the kind of sympathetic sense of, ooh, yeah, this is what I've been doing, and now it's, with this, the changes on the horizon, I'm not sure what I'll be doing next. It's kind of scary. So in the book, they talk about databases, and I wonder if I could find that section really quickly. It was a really good example about, it was in the managing consulting section. And these huge, management consultancies used to have these ginormous research departments, which it's kind of enlightening for me because they basically say that it's just hundreds and hundreds of researchers reading through journals and often kind of collating all the information together. And, they do seem kind of, they want to give out, or at least they did early, that kind of enigmatic, I don't know how you got that answer from, but you've got that answer. Oh, where are those statistics from? When they write the reports, there's a source, but it's like, how did you find that? Well, nowadays, most any government report or investigation is open and readily available. You don't have to write a letter to a certain office and pay £25 or something for them to send you a copy of this really dense report that you then have to wade through. It's all, things are online, they're in PDFs, they're searchable. So it meant all these management consultancies all of a sudden had to shrink very quickly to keep up, because there was an amazing database. I forget what it's called now. I can't find it. But it's not just the automation side, as they were saying. It's not just the database, and then you search for, I need a journal article on X. There's an innovation side to it as well, because there's a bit more kind of machine learning involved in the whole process, and using this software actually kind of, it helps weight the information. Probably just spits out a direct answer, not just saying, oh, here's a search engine that kind of lists, these are the kind of articles that keyword search. It's a based on these 3 articles that were recently published, your answer is this. And then I just thought, wow, how cool and terrifying that your role could be summed up by a just really, really, really good searchable database. And funny enough, there's a Facebook video going around from British Pathé about, it's a video of globe makers. If someone happens upon this on their Facebook, it's really interesting to watch. So you see these, and it's not that long ago. I think it was from like the 1950s. So they prepare the ball. There's a guy at what looks like it almost looks like a potter's wheel, but it's not. It's like, it looks like a giant the globe, the ball, and surrounded by plaster Paris, maybe gesso, kind of, something like that, some sort of ground, and it's just spinning it on this table with the convex bit of it to make the round globe. And then he hangs it on a frame, and then that gets dried and moves along, and there's the two women who put these strips on it to give it some sort of textured surface for the actual map to go on. And then the next scene, you see women cutting by hand with scissors strips of printed map into these kind of elongated, I'm sure there's an actual geometric shape name for this, but I can't think of it at the moment. But kind of think of like almond-shaped, oval with pointy ends, leaf-shaped bits of the map where they cut out, and then they physically glue it onto the globe, line them up by hand, and then another woman then paints in the gap in between before. Once it's all done, then it goes off to the last person, who's in the video a gentleman with a big spray gun, whom I'm assuming is lacquering the globe when it's finished. And wow, globes. I missed those. Those were quite fun. And second, yeah, as someone who also works in the field, as much as I love tech and digital stuff and coding, and I do work in the field where people had amazing delicate hand skills, or and I can't say that I'm as good as a goldsmith or anybody, or a glass blower, someone who's been doing that for forever. I mean, I work with things that decompose, and well, anything that therefore, but by the time they get to me, they're okay. So sometimes they're in a pristine state, and my job is just to keep it pristine. The way it got to being just conceived and created in the first place, wow. And I just wonder what happens to those sorts of skills when there's so much more technology. And I'm not anti either side. I'm actually doing some research into this, seeing what the impact is. My feeling is to bridge the gap a bit. So some skills need to be taken up. We need to be generalists or specialists necessarily. It's a big spectrum, but we need to be kind of somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, moving around instead of being at the polar ends. But that does mean taking up new skills, but it also means getting your hands dirty. I think there's a lot to be said about just sometimes just doing it and getting your hands dirty. mixing some mortar, getting really dried, cracked hands because it's been wet and out in the cold. We learn a lot doing something like that. And I know a few people who are, and this is their term, not my term, they refer to themselves as CAD monkeys, who in their own time, build boats, build racing cars, build lots of building stuff, carpentry, metalworking, all sorts. Mainly, I guess, just to something not screen based. And I don't think this is planned, but I think there's a desire there, an innate desire to kind of, sometimes we have to get out of our cerebral selves, and a lot of the techie side sometimes can be a bit cerebral because, I don't know. Yes, please ping me if I'm wrong, if you disagree. But if you're thinking through a function, thinking through, going through code, kind of just working out that puzzle in your head. I always try to get kids to like diagram it out. It's just easier when there's something you could refer to. But other people, it's just, it's like people who just code in Notepad, black and white, just lines. But then, they make Scalextrics models, very, very complicated Scalextrics models. Anyway, it's nearly an hour. I've kind of gone around all sorts of things this evening. I think my final thought is MongoDB. Does anybody use that for AEC? I'm just really curious if anyone's starting to have data that and they're readily accessing it. Anyway, quite random, but I figure I throw that out there. Ping me a message. If you don't know what MongoDB is, Google it. This is in the world of big data, I guess. Like I said, the book club is fairly new. We're getting our feet wet in a way, just to see if it serves a need. We want a forum, and kind of most of the time, people love to talk about these interesting ideas, and we want it to be a forum to share it. But at the same time, tech could be temporally ubiquitous, but people have schedules. People have stomachs that are hungry. People are kind of bound to train schedules, whether they like it or not. People have children who also need to eat, and bedtimes they need to keep to. So as much as we can rely on technology to keep us connected whenever we want, we still need to live our day to day to the clock in some way. So again, I understand. Send me a picture. That would be great. I'd love to see what you guys are up to and are having fun, and keep me up to date. Let me know, and I will talk about your idea in the next meeting. I will bring it up. We will discuss it. And another way you could do it, you could either tweet me, or you could check out our website at dotBUILTe.org, and you could join our group, and then that will give you access to our Slack group, and yeah, join the conversation that way. Hopefully I will see you out in the real world, either at a meetup or a conference real soon, or next week. So far, like I said, we're going to do this week by week, every Thursday night at 8. That might change, especially with Christmas coming up and people going all over the place. So if, long car journeys, you never know. Maybe you could, as long as you use hands-free, you could join in. All right, that is me for the .be book club. We are reading Future of the Professions, going into section 2 for next time. And this is where, instead of they've been setting the scenes, of course, but now we're gonna really dive in and start talking about kind of some of those uncomfortable things that I was on about earlier, but also some of the really cool stuff in more in depth. So that's it for now. Good night.